It's the Wednesday evening edition of Weather for Weather Geeks here on August the 26th. It's been a quiet season in the Atlantic Ocean for tropical activity. Up until now, things are getting a little more active for the time being. We have Tropical Storm Erica, and that's where I want to start tonight before we hone in on our local weather. If you have friends or relatives in Florida, if you have anybody that you know that's planning a vacation to the Bahamas or Florida, they definitely need to watch out for this. Erica right now is struggling a bit. This is east of Antigua right now, and it's a minimal tropical storm, might even be downgraded to a depression at some point, but it's going to get into a much more favorable environment for strengthening and development as we head towards the weekend and this starts to approach the Bahamas. So here's the official track from the National Hurricane Center. Erica may be close to the Turks and Caicos as we go towards the weekend, and then by Saturday night, Sunday night, right through the heart of the Bahamas. That's where the most likely track is, but meteorologists across the country have been trying to really get people to understand that you need to focus on the cone and not necessarily the main or most likely track in the middle. Because especially 4 or 5 days out, there's a lot that can change here. So it may be just as likely to go down here as up here. This is just kind of right in the middle. So this could head towards the Florida Keys. It may crash into Cuba. It may miss Florida altogether. Right now, the most likely scenario takes it pretty close to the east coast of Florida as we go into Sunday night and Monday. But this is a forecast that's far from etched in stone. So stay tuned on Erica. Now, impacts up here where we live, way too early to say on that. Don't think it's real likely we have any impacts. I think the odds favor this kind of meandering somewhere off the coast of the southeast for quite a while and never really impacting our weather. What it might actually do, though, is block up the pattern some and really lock in the hot weather that's coming next week. If this hurricane or tropical storm, whatever it's going to be, just sort of lollygags off the southeast coast, it could be like a traffic cop with a stop sign up, keeping the rest of the country kind of locked in a pattern, and that may mean extended heat. For us, we'll talk about that more as we go through time. I've been putting together a fancy-dancy chart here of average high temperatures at the Canfield Fair, which starts a week from today. At the station here, we're always talking about how the Canfield Fair, it always seems like it's really hot. It doesn't help that we're in the WFMJ tent, which is enclosed and air doesn't move real well and that sort of thing. So it always seems a little warmer than it actually is. But I looked at the last 50 Canfield Fairs and found some interesting things here. We actually had the coolest fair on record for the past 50 years. Relatively recently, back here in 2006, average temperature was in the upper 60s for highs during the 6-day run of the fair. The warmest number I could find for the fair was back in 1973, right here, where the average temperature was in the upper 80s. A close second was this year, which was 1991. A lot of days in the upper 80s and lower 90s during those 2 years. They definitely stand out here on this chart. The past few years have been warm. 2013 was particularly warm. That's this spike right here with the average temperature of about 83. Last year was a little bit cooler. But it's kind of interesting to look at this stuff, and I'll probably put together a fancier, easier to read graphic as we get a little bit closer to the fair. But this was my preliminary shot at the Canfield Fair and the weather over the last 50 years. All right, today, boy, we started advertising this cool shot as a taste of September, but boy, forget that. It's October the last couple of days. 67 yesterday, 65 was the high in Youngstown today. Thick blanket of clouds all day. Some of us had a sprinkle, especially to the north. As you can see, although we're losing the visible satellite here as the sun starts to set, this bank of clouds extends back here. This is going to continue rotating through tonight and probably for a good chunk of the day tomorrow. We might see a little bit more sunshine tomorrow afternoon than we had today. I doubt it's real appreciable, though. I think the flavor of Thursday is still pretty cloudy, and that's going to keep a lid on temperatures, certainly. Speaking of temperatures, well, it's definitely the cool spot in the country, right where we live, in Northeast Ohio, Western PA, and Northern Indiana, parts of Michigan, upstate New York. Very cool for August. The heat is out here across the middle of the country, and this will finally get the green light to come east as we go through time. I want to talk about the upper levels before I talk about the lower levels of the atmosphere where we live, because this is where we can pick out, a little more easily the weather features that are going to be changing over the next several days. I'm going to bring up the 18,000 foot, or for you real weather geeks, the 500 millibar level. This is a level we look at a lot to pick out what's going on upstairs in the atmosphere a little bit. Here's the current 500 millibar flow. We have our low up here, just east of Hudson Bay, getting set to start to fill and move away, with a trough extending down through the southeast. That's why it's so comfortable in the southeast for this time of the year, and why it's so cool up here. High pressure, a ridge is centered out here across the Four Corners region. That's the current pattern. I'm going to fast forward to the end of the upcoming weekend, which is right here, and you'll notice by Sunday how much things have started to change. The ridge out west is starting to lean east. A big time trough is coming into the Pacific Northwest and the West Coast, and our upper low is gone. It's and the associated trough is moving away. So this heat dome is starting to tilt this way, and that trend will continue next week while this powerhouse trough moves into the West Coast. When there's a trough on the West Coast, a lot of times there's a ridge downstream in the east, and that's exactly what's going to transpire next week. This is a blowtorch pattern here for the eastern two-thirds of the country. Cool and wet out here, but look at this, big enclosed area, and this is a big heat dome for the middle of next week, starting around September 1st, and this may last all the way through Labor Day. I mean, here's the 5th. I think Labor Day is the 5th or the 4th or the 6th. It's the 5th, actually. But either way, if the GFS is right, and this has the support of other models, it could be really hot. I mean, this is a heat dome that we haven't seen all summer sitting over our neck of the woods. And if this were to verify, I suspect we're going to see 90 plus a few different times as we go towards the Labor Day holiday weekend. And again, some of this might depend on what happens with Erica. If Erica meanders down here and kind of blocks up the pattern, then yeah, this heat dome is just going to stay stuck for a while across the plains, the Midwest, and into the east as well. Real quick look at September as a whole. Of course, this begins next week. September still being advertised as a warmer than average month by the climate models. This may be heavily weighted towards the beginning of the month because the beginning of the month could be really toasty. We could have some cooler weather towards the end of the month that doesn't quite balance it out, and the month as a whole ends up being pretty toasty because of what happens early in the month. Here's the precipitation anomalies for September on the latest climate models, painting a dry scenario in the southeast and the east coast and wetter than average in a good chunk of the west and into parts of the plains, and maybe just about average here locally. So that's what the latest 7 runs of the climate forecast system has for September. Stay tuned on that. I will have a fresh updated 7-day forecast and everything else you need to know coming up tonight on 21 News at 11, and more Weather Geeks coming your way Thursday evening, usually online between 7:30 and 8. Have a great night.